Tick, boom. We're bringing the noise. Go, baby, we bringing our toys. Separate me from the boys.
Got 2 minutes.
We should be on the floors. Bang, bang, we gon' ride out. Gang, gang, we gon' die out. Running like this ain't no timeouts. Tell me who we gon' find out. We serving a piece. Working, we serving the streets. Block and go ahead, going beast. Bang, bang, leave you sleep. Tick, boom. Hard body, and not scaring nobody. Don't make me resort to wild. You must be behind the diamonds. This way, but y'all won't need to try this. So it's no way around it. You the loudest one is serving a piece, working, we serving the streets. Block and go ahead, going beast.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Bang, leave you sleep.
Wow, that's
Tick, boom. You can't stop me, so who gon' stop me? You can't stop me, so who
all
gon'
right.
stop me? You can't stop me, so who gon' stop me? You can't stop me, so who gon' stop me? We be disturbing a piece, working, we serving.
All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started here in just a second. I see we got a lot of people logging in. It is 1 o'clock straight up. Do me a favor, if you are in the chat box or if you're in the session right now, hit me up in the chat box. Let me know that you can hear me. And just let me know where you're from. The city or state would be great. Now that'll kick things off here in a minute. Just so I know if it's working for one, like Lisa, I see you there, so it should be fine. There we go. Chicago, New Jersey, Ohio. We got Canada, New Hampshire. Man, we got people all over. Scottsdale. I actually went to school in a grade school in Scottsdale. I got Wisconsin, Minneapolis, lived there for a little bit while my daughter played hockey up there for a couple of years. Got Connecticut. I've lived in Connecticut. I've been all over the place, I guess, huh? So we got peeps all around the world. All right. India even. Wow. Okay. Really far away. Cool. Got Denver. Anybody here in Tampa with me down in Florida? I mean, why not? The rest of the world's moving here. I don't see why you guys should be any different. All right, Los Angeles, Alexandra, Boca Raton. Hey, Joe. Hey, no more. We're closed. Tampa's closed. No more. We're all sold out. Okay. All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started here today. Hey, Caesar and San Fran, nice to see you. All right. So listen. So we got a couple of things that we're going to be talking about in this free session. First of all, if you don't know me, my name is Michael Pedone. I own salesbuzz.com. What is SalesBuzz? SalesBuzz is an online sales training program where basically I teach the 7 core principles that I've used when it comes to selling, that I've used to become extremely successful over and over and over again, no matter what industry I was in, whether it was other companies' industries or whether I started my own, because I started a couple of companies now. And I just keep using the same phone sales process. I just adapt it to that vertical and that industry's pain points, and it's just wildly successful. So I basically, instead of me, I used to do all for like 10 years, I would do all the training live once a week in these on-demand webinar or on these live webinars. Since COVID hit, I just put it all on demand. I lowered the price, and now people can just sign up on their own and get it. With that being said, in today's session, this is a free session. I wanted to share some thoughts and feedback. So we're getting a lot of clients are asking some questions, and one of them was, it really centered around, what is an actual cold call? Because there's so much information out there where I would get contact and say, hey, my team sees on LinkedIn that these articles say don't cold calling is dead, et cetera. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I don't want you to have to cold call if you don't want to. Are you generating enough inbound leads to avoid cold calling? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, but they're like, well, we're being told that cold calling is old and that you should send an email first to warm them up. How many of you have heard that? How many of you have heard that advice? Maybe even tried it, right? Send an email first to try to warm them up. And then you call them, seeing if they got the email or whatever. And then it's usually like, no, who are you with? And you're off to the wrong start. And so here's the thing. When people are telling you that cold calling is dead, they're trying to tell you to, warm it up or do some. Here's another one. How many of you told to warm up a lead is you're supposed to do research on them first? That's how you warm up lead, right? Yeah. Okay. How does that make it any warmer for them? How does it make it any warmer for the prospect? They still don't know you, right? So here's the thing. The actual definition of a cold call is contacting any prospect that is not currently raising their hand. How's that sound? Greg, you can personalize it all you want, but it's still a cold outreach, right? It's not warmer to them. So let's go over that again. So the definition of a cold call is contacting any prospect that is not currently raising their hand. Let me do this. I said prospect, but here's another thing. The definition of cold call is contact as well as also contacting any client that is not currently raising their hand. How many of you have existing clients and you want to get some reorders? They haven't ordered from you in a while and you want to reach back out to them. If they're not raising their hand, you're still doing a cold outreach. Nothing wrong with this. It's okay. But the problem is there's too many people who sucked at selling and failed miserably that are telling you not to do something, and they're trying to mislabel it, usually for their own personal benefit. Let's just call a spade a spade. And they're saying, hey, don't do that. Buy my software so you can send out these mass emails and warm them up, or use our research tool. Now, here's the thing. I don't have anything against those tools, and I definitely think the research is important. However, if you are a sales rep and you're not at the level that you need to be or that you want to be in sales, and you're feeling that cold calling isn't for you, and you feel like you should do some research, or you should send an email first because you have a hang up on the cold call, you're still doing cold call outreach. Here's another one. How about if you call your best client and ask them for some referrals, and they give you you put them on the spot, and they give you a couple names, and then you reach out to those names. Is that a warm lead or a cold lead? And it's still a cold call, right? Unless the only way that changes is unless you have a client and they have somebody that comes to them and says, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. They go, oh, I know how to do that. Give Mike a call, or go to a Sales Buzz site, and you'll be able to find, just let them know I sent you. And then you get an inbound call or a form they fill out and they contact you somehow. That's an inbound warm lead. That's the second hottest lead you'll ever get, right? But that's a warm lead. But if you call your prospects, you actually have to make two cold calls. You have to call you call your client. You have to make two cold calls, right? You call your client, ask them for some names, they give them to you, then you have to call them. You're doing double the work, and it's still a cold call, right? Listen, nothing wrong with that if that's your process, but let's call a spade a spade. It's important to understand what an actual cold call is and get rid of the stigma. The definition, again, I'll say it one more time for people that are just joining. The definition of a cold call is contacting anybody that is not currently raising their hand. That includes people that might have done business with you before, and that's okay. So once you know how to designate, is this a warm inbound lead? Are they raising their hand? By the way, the process is the same. Okay, so whether it's an inbound warm lead or an outbound call, the process is the same. You still have to do two things. You have to pique interest and gain permission to continue the call. Now, it's a lot easier to pique interest when it's an inbound lead. They're calling, hey, I'm trying to get some pricing on information on what you offer. Great. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions just to make sure what we offer would be a good fit for you? Would that be okay? Well, yeah, sure. And they just hand you permission. It's the same thing on a cold call, right? The reason why cold calling fails all the time is one, the sales rep doesn't understand what the true objective is. There's literally a 7-step sales process, 7 sales techniques that you have to master to be very successful, to optimize your income level of selling by phone. And they're universal. It doesn't matter what industry there is. And the very first step is you have to pique interest. Now, on an inbound lead, they already have some interest, right? That's why they're calling. But then you got to pique that interest with what's in it for them. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions first to make sure what we offer is a good fit for you? Would that be okay? Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Okay, boom, you're in there, right? On an outbound lead, you still have to pique interest. The problem is too many people call and say what they offer and what they do. You're selling the drill bit and not the hole that it makes. Think about what I just said for a second. Does that make some light bulbs go off when I say it that way? You're offering the drill bit, you're selling the drill bit, not the holes that it makes or the ease with which it makes it, right? So in other words, let me give you an example. If I call and I say, hey, this is Michael Padone with Sales Buzz, and I offer sales training, and I want to get you on my calendar as next Tuesday or Wednesday, good for you. And then I'm going to hear, no, thanks, no shit, we're all set. We already do something in-house. And then I'm going to be forced to do the yeah buts. Yeah, but we're different because blah, blah, blah. And now I'm forced to doing a mini data dump, which I'll probably hear, oh, just send me some information. If I'm interested, I'll call you back. And if you're a young rep, you go, that's fabulous. You send information. You're like, hey, I got a hot one. I'm going to follow up next week. And they never take your call next week. Stop me if you've heard this before. Have you been in this situation? A little too close to home? Right. And then you go, well, you see on LinkedIn and they go, and you see cold calling doesn't work. You're like, yeah, cold calling doesn't work. No, you use the wrong strategy. Now, if I build my list, which I'm going to get to in a second, that I build the list the right way, and I make that same cold call, and I go, and in my industry, let's say it's a small company under 200 employees, 50 to 200 employees. I'm going to call the sales director or the VP of sales, right? I get them on the phone. I go, hi, this is Michael Padone at salesbuzz.com, and I help sales teams overcome call reluctance. Let me just stop right there. Chances are they're going to want to hear what I have to say next, because whether they have 5, 10, 15, 20 sales reps on their team, chances are half of them, at least half of them, probably have call reluctance. So now I'm agitating that pain, scratching an itch. I'm selling the hole, not the drill bit. Does that make sense? So the very first step is I gotta pique that interest within the first few seconds. And the second step is to gain permission to continue the call. If you notice on the first one that I did, and by the way, I have one of the courses that I have, the very first course is absolutely free. I would recommend you guys go to the website after this and sign up for it, because you'll take there's nothing hold back. You get the whole thing step by step on how to create opening value statement. If you haven't taken it yet, I'd highly recommend it for you. And it's a good intro. If you like it, then you can just move on to the rest of the course. If you want, you can just unlock it. But I always give the first course away free. So I'm giving you a high level of opening value statements right now, some examples, but it'll go into more detail in that. But the thing is that when I pique interest by saying, well, I'm agitating a pain or scratching an itch in the first 5 to 15 seconds of the call, and they go, well, yeah, I got a second, and then I gain permission, right? Yeah, John, it's a good idea. I'll go ahead and drop the link. With that being said, I go ahead and gain permission to them. They're like, yeah, sure. They give me control to ask questions, which is the exact opposite of the old way. See, the old way of selling is we were taught to take tight control of the prospect right out of the gate, right? By asking them a probing question. Why? Because the person asking questions is in control. I got that. The problem though is that when you just go right on in there and then you try that old 1980s cold calling strategy where you just try to take control, you get those short one-word answers back from your prospect. It's like dragging a mule uphill. How many of you have experienced that on a daily basis, right? Okay, so with that being said, and yes, I see somebody else asking for the link set. I'll do it afterwards, right? So when we get done with this. So when you do it that way, they're half listening to you and it's resistance. But if I pique interest and gain permission first, they lower their guard, their ears are up. And then now I just have to make sure I know exactly how to execute the next step out of the 7 steps I was sharing with you. So the first one's pique interest. Second one's gain permission, continue to call. The third one is ask an engagement question. I know how to do all this before I ever pick up the phone. I know when I pique interest, gain permission, I get that far. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask what's called an engagement question. Right. And then an engagement question puts their attention in an area I want them thinking about. They respond. We're now having a sales conversation. Then I can go to steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we're filling the pipeline with excellent. We're filling the pipeline with sales calls that were turned into high opportunities that are going to close at a high rate. Selling by phone is very easy. When I say by phone, call it Zoom, whatever, however you guys are doing it these days, it's very easy. I think a lot of people make it more difficult than it has to be. But then again, it's only easy when you take the advice and the experience of somebody who's been wildly successful at it. And that's just a fact. I've been extremely successful as a straight commission sales rep in multiple industries using the same pattern. Once I learned, I was horrible in the beginning. Listen, I made every mistake there is to be made. Every mistake you've made, I've already made and then some, but then I figured out a solution. And this process is the simplest one out there. And it all starts with understanding what the actual definition of a real cold call is. So don't be afraid to make cold calls. I would much rather you guys handle inbound warm leads. By the way, just because it's an inbound warm lead doesn't mean that's the decision maker, right? That could have been an intern that somebody asked to do some research. They might not have any power at all. So you're going to have to be able to know how to handle that. The 7 steps I teach will help identify that and then help get the other people involved, right? But with that being said, I would much rather you guys deal with inbound warm leads all day long, but that's just not a reality sometimes. And if you're in a situation that is great, then just be careful not to get lazy, because I've seen a lot of people when the low-hanging fruit was really good and they were hitting their numbers, and they thought they were the best salesperson in the world, and all of a sudden the low-hanging fruit starts to dry up and they don't know how to climb that tree to get to that middle level, right? So you have to sharpen your sales skills constantly, but it starts with knowing what a cold call is actually. Now, with that being said, let's get to the next thing. So now you understand the identify what a cold call is. Well, how do you build a cold call list? It's very simple. First of all, unless you are starting day one a brand new business, right? So even if you're an entrepreneur, but let's say you're with a company or you have some history, and I'm assuming 99.9% of you here have a company that has a history of clientele already. Yes, you're either yourself or your company. Yes, okay. How many you guys using CRMs? All right. So the thing is this: simply go run a report on all your. Let me give you an example. Like last year, I could do a report on all my new sales, first time orders for last year. I take that, I use a third party data enrichment tool. I'm not getting paid. They should pay me. I drive a lot of business for them, but it's called uplead.com. There's also ZoomInfo. All right. There's several of them out there. I used to use Datanyze, but then they switched things over and it meant to be a mess. But so far, Uplead is one of the easier ones. Some people use Seamless AI, right? But the point is this, is that I would take all of the deals that I closed, all their information, and run it through data enrichment. And then I just analyzed who my target audience was. And what I found is that the majority of my audience has between 50 and 200 employees. Now, sure, I have bigger ones. I have like 3M is my largest account, right? 10,000 employees or more. But that's the one-off. The majority of my clients, there was two categories, 50 and 200 and 10 and 50. Those were my sweet spots. Now, yes, I had other ones that in every other category that did some business, but if I was forced as a sales rep to only process, I looked and go, if I can only pick one, what is it? Well, I'm going to go where it has the most, they identify the characteristics that bought from me the most, even if it was only by a few percentage points. And it happened to be, obviously, USA business. They sold business to business. And so it didn't matter. I noticed the industry wasn't the same. There was like 86 different industries, but so that's too many. So I had to look at other factors. I go, well, okay, well, business to business, USA most part, and Canada, and then they had 200 to 500 employees, and then out of that, the titles of the people that were involved in the decision making process either had a VP or a director, or if it was a little bit smaller company, an owner or partner as a title. Okay, so then what I did was I was able to go ahead and narrow my focus, because I got 50,000 leads sitting in the database, right? And then we're able to just go ahead and run them through the data enrichment, and then all of the ones that match a certain. If I have to do outbound cold calling, I want to start with the ones that are going to have the highest percentage chance of needing what I want and being interested in what I want and buying and paying for what I want. Does that make sense? So you just have to look back. So if you want to build your list, that's a great way to go ahead and do it as far as that goes. Now, any questions on that? Because it's really that's cut and simple and dry before I move on to the next thing. I really want to maximize the amount of information you guys get in the shortest amount of time. So we good? Does that make sense for everybody? All right, perfect. And I will take some questions at the end here. So the next thing is how to decide what to say and lead the conversation. This is, I think, the best use of the time is, and again, since it's free, is not a big deal, right? I'm going to put the link in there. I would go ahead and and I'm going to get to that in a second. I would go ahead and try the free course. It's going to show you exactly how to build your own opening value statement. There's also plenty of things on my blog, but the essence is this. You have to have a what's in it for them value statement. Every opening value statement, I don't care what you sell, what industry, the opening value statement's job is to do two things: peak interest first, gain permission second. And when you learn how to wordsmith your opening value statement, and when you agitate the pain, scratch the itch, you're not trying to sell in the opening value statement. You're not doing a data dump, right? You just, like you said, think in the terms of Twitter, short, right to the point, 140 characters. My opening on the number one opener I use, reason for my call, I specialize in helping outbound sales teams overcome call reluctance. And if I caught you at a good time, I'd like to ask you a few questions just to see if what we have to offer maybe is some help to you. Would that be okay? Now, 90% of the time, I get a sure. Think about that, 90%. But I built my list to my target audience. I'm leading with a what's in it for them. I'm not promising or guaranteeing. And then I gain that permission. Now, if they say no, if there's some resistance there, I go, listen, you probably, I have a rebuttal already. And for that 10%, listen, you probably get calls like this all the time, but I'm not calling you out of the blue. I actually did a little research and your demographics fit clients that we've helped dramatically increase their sales within a short period of time. I just need to ask you a few questions first to be sure if we can do the same for you. Would that be okay? If they still say no, say, listen, no problem. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you my contact information. If you ever run into a situation where you're having too much turnover, your team isn't hitting the numbers, and you're going to have to start having some uncomfortable conversations, I might have a solution you'll want to know about. We can talk then. Fair enough? And they'll go, oh, okay. And then I send them an email and I move on. I cannot tell you how many times the next day, week, a month, 6 months from now, that person comes back when they trip over what I call a tripwire or a trigger event. And then they remembered what I said because I planted that seed, and all of a sudden they are having too much turnover. Or they did miss their quota for the third month in a row, and they're the VP of sales. And hey, the owner is having they're having an uncomfortable conversation, but it's not with the sales reps, it's with the owner. Now that person's job's on the line. They're like, oh, maybe I should see about getting these guys some help, right? That's just my industry, but that's the formula I use when I would sell computer diagnostics, computer training, advertisement. It didn't matter. The process is the same. You just adjust to your industry. So, what to decide to say to lead the conversation is going to tremendously help you when taking that first class. Then you go from there. With that being said, so somebody's asking what number 4. Listen, let me just, Dale, you know what? I'm going to give you all 7. You ready? Peak interest, gain permission to continue the call, ask your engagement question, identify opportunity size, right? Get pain point problem recognition. Cool? You get pain point problem recognition, identify their role, and then qualify on price. Those are the simple 7 steps. Now, I know I went through that quickly. It's very detailed on how you do this, but when you master each one of those 7, everything else is so easy when it comes to selling. When I say easy, you still have to do the hard work. You have to do the outbound. You can't just sit back and wait, right? You're going to have to make the outbound calls, but you're going to have to know that those are the 7 steps, and you have to know exactly what to say in each one to get to the next level. Okay, cool. All right, somebody's asking no database to pull from where to get a scrape. I'm not really into scraping. Like if you're new, then you should really think of what is my problem I solve, and then cast a little bit of a wide net first, try multiple pricing points if you're brand new as an entrepreneur, and then see what's working and then go from there. But the majority of you here are selling for another company, right? All right. Again, yes, before I move on, I'll go over the 7 because I know I went quick, right? So peak interest, gain permission to continue the call. Once you got that, ask your engagement question, identify opportunity size, get pain point, right? Good. All right, identify their role. And the last one is you have to qualify them on price. You got to qualify on price. That's a big controversy because a lot of people, every single sales rep I know, their manager or somewhere along the line tells them not to bring up price until after the presentation, and it's a huge mistake. It's why your close rates are low, and that's why you hear things like, well, we don't have it in the budget, and yet you just spent an hour doing a demo, right? And the problem is you don't know if they're lying or telling the truth. But if you learn to do the 7 steps, you get all that stuff worked out, and all of a sudden your close rate goes through the roof. Again, it's all detailed in the pro if you guys are interested in that. So that's how you decide though on how to lead the conversation, is by starting with the opening value statement and following those 7 steps. The last one is how to handle rejection like a champ. Well, if you've noticed on my opening value statement that I gave, even though it works for me 90% of the time, if it should fail the first time, I had an immediate comeback. And if that one failed, I had a third one that I ran the plant the seed play, but then I just move on. I take them and I put them back into the drip email marketing campaigns that I have and let that do its job. Look, your job as a sales rep is not to close every lead you come across. That's not your job. Your job is to close as many qualified prospects as fast as possible. And in order to qualify a prospect, I don't care who tells you different, you have to have a conversation. You should know who your target audience is so you can create suspects, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're fully qualified. You got to get the conversation on, because fully qualified means, do they have a problem you can help them solve and they want it solved? Can they make a decision or part of the decision? And can they afford it should they decide they want it, right? Make sense? All right. So with that being said, so how do you handle rejection like a champ? You just have so much confidence that you know the plan, you work the plan, you start seeing success, your numbers go up, and then when you have something that doesn't go your way, it doesn't sap you of your energy, because nobody bats 1,000%. The problem is a lot of you aren't even batting 10%. Right? Instead of getting accepted in your opening value statement 90%, you're getting rejected 90%, and that's going to weigh on anybody's psyche. But when you actually look at the fact that, and again, I'm going to go over this one more time because I see a lot of people asking, but doesn't it make sense to do this? If I peak, do we agree step one is to peak interest? If there's no interest, what else? All right, so peak interest. Now, the gain permission to continue the call is very controversial to a lot of people, but it's only because they were taught the old way for so long, and they go, well, I don't want to give them an out. Well, if you've peaked interest first, you're not going to get the out, right? And then when they give you permission to continue the call, they literally just gave you permission to ask them some questions. Why? Because they recognize there's a what's in it for them by allowing them to have you do so. So now they're going to be more engaged. And then when you ask your engagement question, you understand why the engagement question, which is step 3, by the way, right? And then you get the sales conversation going. Then you have to ask an opportunity size, meaning, don't you want to learn early on what the potential opportunities for you here if they even sign on with you, right? Does that make sense? Right. So somebody's asking me, what's an example of an opportunity size question? So it's real simple. So once I peaked interest, gain permission to continue the call, it's my engagement question is, so your sales team, are they handling inbound warm leads or are they doing traditional outbound cold calling? Now, I don't care how they answer, right? It's the first, it's the second, it's a combination. Doesn't matter. The answer, we're having a conversation. Oh, okay, cool. Just out of curiosity, how many sales reps do you have? Oh, I have 1, I have 5, I have 50, I have 100. I mean, man, I'm 35 seconds in. Look how easy this is, right? And then I got to go to the next one, which is I got to agitate a pain, solve a problem, right? So I got to make sure that there's problem recognition here. And then once that happens, right, you just keep on going. So again, peak interest, gain permission, engagement, opportunity size, problem recognition. Then I want to qualify them on their role, because there's 5 roles and as it relates to every prospect's purchasing ability. I need to know which category they're in. And if they're one of the top 3, then I go to the last thing in, which is I'm going to qualify them on price. And if I'm a BDR, I want to master that, because then when I set that demo up for my account executives, I'm going to make them look like a rock star, because I'm only sending them ones that match this criteria. And now the close rate went through the roof. Cool. Got it? I'll make sure we get this stuff emailed out to you, Liz, as well. Everybody else. Somebody's asking this, is how do you adjust your approach or peak interest when you can't get them on the phone? You have to have a strategy. So first of all, did they meet the certain criteria to be considered a suspect on your list, on your hit list? If the answer is yes, then when you start your outreach, you have to have a game plan. And mine is to, on the very first, when I'm making my outreach, call, voicemail, email. It's that simple. On day 1, call, voicemail, email. Now, and that's if I'm doing outbound cold reach, right? Now, I found success when I call, voicemail, email, and then I use an automated email that'll go out the next day if I haven't heard from them. And then sometimes I even do like a quick breakup on the 3rd day, believe it or not, because I want to get to the other calls. That's one strategy. Another strategy is call, voicemail, email. The next day, call. 3rd day, call, right? And then after that, it's once every 30 days. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do this, but I want to be most effective at my time. And so that's why you also have to, I used to have, I was taught to have this rule as a sales rep. Hold on a second. one of these organizations I was working for, I had this great sales manager that he had the system in play that none of the sales reps liked it, but you had to move the needle within 60 days of taking over an account, or somebody on the 61st day, somebody else could come in and take that account and work it. And the movement of the needle couldn't be just checking in, see how things are going, right? You had to be in the step in the sales process. That gave people the extra motivation to really get creative, reach out to somebody. There were times I would buy, this is before Uber, I would buy lunch and have it sent to a prospect to get their attention with a little note for them to call me after I bought their staff lunch. I mean, there's little things like that that you might have to get creative on if that deal is worth it. If not, then when you call and you reach your certain amount of outreaches to somebody and they're not working, move them, put them on a drip marketing campaign, right? Meaning feed them constant information once a week or every other week, right? Not don't take, but give valuable information in the industry, something that can help them. And when a trigger event happens, they'll remember to reach out to you. In the meantime, keep building that prospect list and getting more people in there. So that's what my answer would be to that, on how to adjust your approach to peak interest when you can't get them on the phone. A lot of times it's also that what you're saying is not piquing their interest. So you have to get creative and figure out what that is. And then once you get the message that you know works, then stick with that and don't change every other one. You have to understand your business is only in business because they created a solution for problems that specific people have. So you should know what those top problems are, right? With that being said, once you find the top two or three hot buttons, maybe your first time outreach, your voicemail and your email is coincide with that. The second outreach could be very simple. Hey, listen, John, it's Michael at SalesBuzz. I left you a message yesterday regarding how we help outbound sales teams overcome call reluctance. One of the other things I didn't mention is that we also help eliminate and lower turnover. And I have a couple ideas I want to run by and see if this makes sense for you. I'm going to send you another email. You'll get it in a second. If you don't see it, check your spam folder. If you want to call me, I can be reached at, and I leave my name and number twice. That's my second message, right? So then if I do want to call on the third one, I might have a third hot button after that. You see how this works? All right, guys, listen. So that's how you handle rejection as a champ. When you have your, well, I'm getting the red light here. When you have your process down, you're confident that's working, and a couple of times you do get rejected, it won't even matter to you. So with that being said, I do see you guys have some hand raising. So I'm being told that we got to wrap things up to stay within our promise here. So I'm going to do this. If you guys just go to here, let's just do it this way. This is going to be the easiest. Let me pull this link up. All right, let me put it in the chat. Can you guys see it? The URL to me, host and panelists. Did you guys see that or no? Oh, hold on. Let me go to everyone. Hold on. There we go. If you just go there to everyone up in the top right, you'll see a free. You can sign up for the free class. If you haven't done it, I'd highly recommend that you do that. If you have more questions, then just here. I'll give you. There's my email address. You see that? So you can send me questions directly. A lot of times I'll turn them into a blog post and then I'll send them out that way. But this is a lot that we've covered in a short time period. I hope you guys found this to be very helpful. If there's anything else that I can do for you, please let me know. But before we get the axe here, can you guys see the email address? Just to go to SalesBuzz and then you'll see the top. You'll see the free you got on there. All right, guys, we good? Was this helpful? All right, excellent, guys. All right, take care. Get on the phones. Let's make something happen. Take care. You're welcome.